They laughed the loudest when she cried the hardest. Emily sat in the crowded school auditorium, her hands shaking as whispers turned to snickers, and snickers turned to cruel laughter. She was the quiet girl, the one who always kept her head down, never causing trouble, never speaking unless she had to. But that day, the bullies found their perfect stage. Someone had stolen pages from her private journal and read them out loud to the entire school assembly. Her secrets, her dreams, her pain broadcasted like a joke. By the time the final cruel line was read, the auditorium erupted in laughter. Emily's face burned red, tears streaming as she ran from the stage. Behind the school, she curled against the cold wall, hugging her knees. Emily wasn't just embarrassed, she was broken. Her mother had passed away years ago, and since then her father, Daniel, had been her rock. A hardworking single dad and decorated police officer, he did everything to give Emily stability. But no badge could shield his daughter from the cruelty of teenagers. At that moment, she wished she could disappear. Meanwhile, Daniel sat in his patrol car, unaware of what had just happened. He had worked a night shift and hadn't yet checked his phone. When a teacher finally called him, her hesitant voice trying to explain the incident, Daniel's chest tightened. He pictured his little girl, his whole world, being laughed at by hundreds of kids. His hands gripped the steering wheel until his knuckles turned white. "I'm on my way," he said, his voice steady but filled with fire. Back in school, Emily tried to gather herself, but the bullies didn't stop. A group of girls cornered her near the lockers, mocking her journal entries, mimicking her crying face. "No wonder you have no friends," one sneered. Just as Emily lowered her head in silence, the sound of heavy footsteps echoed through the hallway. The laughter faded when a tall figure appeared, his badge glinting under the fluorescent lights. Daniel's presence filled the hallway. He wasn't just a father now, he was a man on a mission. "Which one of you thinks it's funny to humiliate my daughter?" His voice was calm but carried a weight that silenced the crowd. The bullies shuffled uncomfortably, their bravado vanishing. Daniel didn't need to raise his voice, his authority spoke for itself. He turned to Emily, kneeling to meet her tear-filled eyes. "You did nothing wrong, sweetheart. Nothing. And I need you to believe that." But Daniel didn't stop at comforting his daughter. He marched straight into the principal's office with Emily by his side. The principal tried to brush it off as kids being kids, but Daniel's voice cut like steel. Kids being kids don't justify cruelty. Kids being kids don't justify public humiliation. My daughter deserves better. And so do every other quiet kid sitting in fear. His words echoed through the office. Other teachers, overhearing, paused outside the door. News spread quickly. Students who once joined the laughter now felt the sting of guilt as they watched Emily's father stand tall for her. The bullies were disciplined, but more importantly, Daniel requested the school implement anti-bullying programs, real accountability, and safe spaces for vulnerable students. He refused to let Emily's pain become another forgotten incident. For Emily, the hardest part wasn't facing the bullies. It was learning to lift her head high again. For weeks, she struggled with anxiety, dreading whispers and sideways glances. But slowly, she noticed something changing. A girl from her math class sat with her at lunch. A boy in art class defended her when someone made a joke. Teachers began paying closer attention to hallway behavior. It wasn't perfect, but it was different. She realized her father's courage had given her something greater than protection. It had given her a voice. One afternoon, standing in front of her class during a presentation, Emily's voice trembled at first, but she remembered her father's words. "You did nothing wrong." She breathed deeply, steadied herself, and spoke with a strength she didn't know she had. When the class applauded, not mockingly this time, but genuinely, her eyes filled with tears, though for once they weren't from pain. Months later, Emily stood in the same auditorium where she had once been humiliated. This time, she wasn't the target, she was the speaker at an anti-bullying assembly, sharing her story. Her father sat in the audience, his badge tucked away, not as a cop but as a proud dad. When she finished, the room was silent, not out of mockery but out of respect. Then came the applause, thunderous and real. Emily walked off the stage, meeting her father's proud eyes. For the first time in a long time, she smiled. Because sometimes, the quietest voices only need one person to stand up for them before they find the courage to speak louder than the rest.